Here we go.
This is the Skip Bayless Show, brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. On today's show, to get you ready for tonight's Game 3 of the NBA Finals, you're going to get the inside perspective from first the man who knows the most about Oklahoma sports, and then from the man who knows the most about Indiana sports. But we start, of course, with my home state, with a man I know pretty well, a man I respect very much for the keen-eyed wisdom with which he writes and speaks. For years, he wrote columns for the Oklahoman. I knew it as the Daily Oklahoman. Now the Tulsa world is very lucky to have this man. Berry Tramel, welcome.
Well, thanks, Skip. How you doing?
I'm doing better than the Thunder are right now, because this is going to be a big night for them, a big test for them. By the way, you are coming to us live from Indianapolis. Is this your first visit to Indianapolis?
No, I've been here a bunch of times for.
Have you? Okay, good.
NCAA regionals and the combine and mock draft and all kinds of stuff. Yeah.
So help me out. How would you compare the city of Indianapolis to the city I grew up in, the city you know very well, Oklahoma City?
Well, I think they're fairly similar.
Yeah,
with Indy being about 15 to 20 years ahead.
Really?
Yeah. You know, for one thing, Lucas Oil Stadium and the Colts is the massive difference. Yeah. But, you know, Indy was the model for Oklahoma City.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, 1991, the two cities contended for the big United Airlines maintenance facility.
Yeah.
Oklahoma City put out a better economic bid. But United went with Indianapolis, and Oklahoma City investigated. They pretty despondent, didn't know what they could do to get over the hump. Wow. And they discovered that quality of living, quality of life, things to do, infrastructure was one of the big reasons that they went with Indy, and that was the impetus to launch the MAPS initiative that brought all the the ballpark, the new arena, the library, all the amenities that we now have, the Bricktown Canal. So salute to Indianapolis for sort of getting Oklahoma City off the schneid.
Okay, so Oklahoma City modeled itself here recently after Indianapolis.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Wow, amazing. Okay, so give me a quick flashback before we flash forward. How different is it for you covering this Thunder team versus covering the 2012 Thunder that obviously made it to the finals?
Well, they're a lot more agreeable to get along with, shall we say. You know, this is a more mature group of young people, I would say. Yeah, it's a deeper group, not just the roster. The ball playing part of it is deeper, but I think just the quality of the character, and you added veterans like Isaiah Hartenstein and Alex Caruso, and SGA has always sort of led. He's not a Peter Pan type leader. He's not a kid leading a bunch of kids. He's a pretty mature. He's a pretty mature young guy, and guys like Jalen Williams and Lou Dort and those guys have followed his lead, and so they're not a lot of selfish is the wrong word, but they really are focused, I think, on the group more than the individual, which at times was a problem back in the Durant Westbrook days. The talent was so good back then that everybody still thought it was great, and it was great. What a wonderful ride. But this group is, seems more intent with in line with the franchise directives and coach, general manager, ownership, everything, players, everything. Everybody seems like they're all on the same page.
Yeah. It was hard for me, more from a distance, to get my arm around the 2012 team, because it never seemed to me like Kevin and Russell, as much as they said, really love playing with each other. I don't know, it just wasn't nearly as lovable as this team is.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And, Durant and Westbrook made it work, but there was always constant conflict. mostly not personal. Most of it was on the court. With we now have 13 years of perspective on Russell Westbrook, an unbelievable force, a great player, but the ball needed to be in his hands a lot.
A whole lot,
And
yeah.
he's on a team with Kevin Durant. So those two, it doesn't hurt to throw Kevin Durant the ball every once in a while. That's 13 more years of perspective. So, that Thunder team was overachieving. The four best players were 23 and 22, two at 23, two at 22. They really weren't ready to win. And then circumstances happened in the next few years, and they just didn't get it done. This is a team, though, that needs to get it done because they are the NBA's best team. In 2012, you couldn't legitimately say these guys are better than LeBron.
No.
That wasn't really the truth. It's the truth today. The best team in the NBA is in Oklahoma City. Now, whether they beat the Pacers or not, we don't know.
Yeah.
But the best team is in Oklahoma City.
The other new development for me, again, from a distance, is this young head coach of the Thunder, just turned 40, is starting to come out of his shell a little bit more. I don't know what you're seeing from the inside out, but I'm looking from the outside in. I watched his whole interview yesterday, and he was extremely engaging and insightful and willing and open, and I found him highly entertaining, dare I say. How have you found working closely with him on a daily basis?
Skip, I started at age 17 in 1978. So that's 47 years ago I've been doing this. He's my second favorite coach to cover in 47 years. And Howard Schnellenberger's number one. I love Howard Schnellenberger. Howard Schnellenberger liked to talk football.
He did.
Football coaches, they don't like to talk football anymore. But Howard Schnellenberger would talk football. He was open with the media. He was misfit. He shouldn't have been the Oklahoma football coach.
Yeah, I understand.
But man, he was good to cover. Mark Daignault, outstanding to cover. Mark Daignault answers every question. Most of the answers are relevant and insightful, and at times, you said at times even funny. He's sort of a normal, down to earth guy. He sort of realizes, he's just a kid from Leominster, Massachusetts, that really sort of stumbled into a great situation. And he's very sharp. He's very personable. He's in a lot of ways the total package, other than, he was never an NBA player, which I guess would be a plus. But no, he's been superb, and he's in lockstep with Sam Presti in terms of the organizational ideals and the directives and the way they want to do things. And the Thunder has a way of, they want to proceed, and they've been doing that for 15 years. Yeah. So it's important to have leadership that's aligned. That hasn't always been the case with the coach. Scotty Brooks was successful. Billy Donovan was successful. Yeah. But at times you need the coach and the general manager to be walking arm in arm, and these two guys are.
Yet is Sam Presti still fairly inaccessible and very tight-lipped as he has always been?
Yeah, with everybody. Now, with the local guys who've been around, he's very accommodating in terms of if you need a question answered for clarification, he's going to talk to you. Okay. He's not going to go on the record with a bunch of stuff. But if you want to know, why'd you trade? They don't really trade people much anymore. But why'd you make this deal for? Or why'd you sign Lou Dort to a big 5-year deal? He'll explain it to you in private and say, "Look, here's why he can guard everybody in the NBA." And then 2 years later, you think, "Oh yeah, now I know why they signed Lou Dort." So that kind of thing. Sam's become a community pillar, an Oklahoma City leader off in non-sports ways in terms of like he's heavily involved with the Oklahoma City National Memorial, those kinds of things. So he's very well respected around town. A lot of people thought he'd be gone after a few years because he's so good at his job. The Celtics might come after him. He's from the Boston area, that kind of thing. But now here he is. He's 19 years. He was hired in 2006, back when the franchise was in Seattle. So he's a long timer by any definition.
So speaking of Lou Dort, you have been doing this for a long time. Have you ever seen anything quite like the way this team plays defense?
I have not. Especially, it's hard for an NBA team, a high-level NBA team, to really get a reputation known for their defense.
Yeah. Agreed.
Go back to the Heatles. They were a phenomenal defensive team. That's a young
Mm.
LeBron and all kinds of Shane Battier's out there running around stopping people.
He was?
But that's not what people remember them
No.
for.
No.
The Spurs in their heyday, the Spurs were guarding the dog out of you. But
They
that's
were.
not what people were known for. They were known for Tim Duncan, his all-around game, and Manu Ginobili, a magician,
Yeah.
and Tony Parker with the ball and directing. And the Thunder has become known as just these Dobermans that, they pick you up and don't get out of the way, and you can't get rid of them, and they got waves of guys coming at you. So to me, that's a phenomenon in the modern NBA that people look at the Thunder and the first thing they think of is defense. That's just not very common in the NBA.
Well, as you know, it's very difficult to get professional NBA basketball players to focus on, to take the most pride in the wrong end of the floor, right? I mean, sure, they all care about playing defense and they talk about playing defense, but they don't play defense with the commitment this team attacks you with his defense.
Yeah, and the other thing, they're so versatile too. It really doesn't rely on one guy to carry such a load. Now, Dort, I think, is the best, because he is such an on-ball defender against superstars, and that's the rarest thing you can find.
Yep.
But he's got a couple of sidekicks that are about as good or close to it. If he gets in foul trouble, it's not a calamity. If he gets tired, he's got people, Alex Caruso, Cason Wallace, that can come in and hold the fort. And then Jalen Williams is guarding everybody, and he's guarding Pascal Siakam and Julius Randle and guys way bigger. And early in the year, they played 5, 6, 7, 8 games without a center. They got 2 really good centers, and then the third center, Jalen Williams, the other, is a pretty solid role player.
He's a pretty good player. Yep.
Yeah, and they played 5, 6 games where Jalen Williams, the small Jalen Williams, is having to be the center. So he's guarding the biggest guy on the floor, and they just adjust to it and do pretty well. So it's a very versatile defense. They can mix and match and do a lot of things. Daigneault throws in some zone pretty regular just to get people off. So it's really a defensive. It's a wonderfully put together defensive roster. Offensively, they're not as good as they are on defense, but they also have Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. You don't need a lot of offense other than SGA on many nights.
By the way, I know he's still very young. What is he, 26? But in star power, how is he starting to compare to KD, Russ, and James Harden?
Well, I would say he's not yet on the level of Durant or Westbrook. Part of that is because we got, as a city, as a state, we got a little jaded. Durant broke a lot of hearts when he left.
Yeah.
And people aren't so quick to give away their heart after it's been broken.
Yeah.
A championship
I
would change.
That's a good point. Yeah.
A championship would change that, I think. But until that happens, people are going to be a little bit, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander looks too good to be true.
Yeah, he does.
He's just a total package, everything you want in a superstar, high quality, high character, all those things, never in trouble, never says the wrong thing, is somebody that, everybody can emulate, everybody can be proud of. But that's also how we thought of Kevin Durant 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And nobody really thinks of Kevin that way anymore. He's sort of become mercurial and sort of a vagabond. So we think we know SGA and we hope we know him, but we're just going to hold on to the rope a little bit longer.
Okay, that's fair. So he hasn't also broken through yet nationally to me. I probably have a little different perspective than you, but what I see in his game is he's not, a power dunker like Ant-Man is, and he's not a logo three-point shooter like Steph. it's a lot in between. And when he does get to the rim, because he attacks the rim as much as, or actually more than anybody in the league, but it's all finesse finishes, as you know, a lot of off the glass. So there's not huge wow factor because 15-foot jump shots aren't wow factor for much of America. For the casual fans, that's not going to draw them in. Is that the perspective you feel from your seat?
Yeah, I guess so. I don't know when it was. Was it in January or maybe earlier than that? We had this big debate in the NBA about the future face of the NBA, and it's centered on Anthony Edwards.
Yep.
Is Anthony Edwards the next face of the NBA? And I thought, first of all, Anthony Edwards is a wonderful player. I just saw him in the, Western Conference Finals. He's clearly a superstar, going to get better. Minnesota's, lucky to have him. But he's not better than Shai Gilgeous-Alexander.
He's not.
This guy's just finished his third year, first team All-NBA. Not too many guys have gone 3 straight years first team All-NBA. The guys who have done that are in the holy of holies in the NBA. He's a scoring champion. It's his third straight year over 30 points a game and over 50% shooting. I don't want to start a forest fire, but that's the domain of Michael Jordan. That's who does that. So why wouldn't SGA be the face of the NBA? And part of it's he's Canadian. He's not an American. Canadian. And that matters. The other thing is what you said is he's not a social media. He's on social media more for his fashion sense than for his basketball exploits. Yeah, he doesn't dunk much. He doesn't stop and jacks 26-footers. And he's sort of an old school type player. I had a wonderful, and this will be good for you. I had a friend of mine send me a deal. He's an old guy that grew up a Knicks fan, born in New York, and followed the Knicks back in their glory days. And he found in Bill Bradley's book, he found a passage of Bill Bradley talking about Walt Frazier, and about 300 words of Bill Bradley describing Walt Frazier. And if you read it, you think this isn't Walt Frazier he's talking about. It's Shai Gilgeous-Alexander with the way he's built and the way he plays and just his game. And none of us. I've never thought of Walt Frazier and SGA the same, but that was a 50-year ago perspective of Frazier. And so that's sort of the kind of ball player that he is. He's a very unique player and a guy with just incredible style, but it's not style that's necessarily conducive to 21st century stardom.
No, it's not.
The Thunder and Oklahoma City is fine with that. I mean, the way he plays is great. He's bringing back the 15-footer, the 12-foot baseline jumper, which is almost automatic. Nobody shoots that shot anymore, and it's SGA's it's his favorite shot.
And it's a hard shot too. That's a hard shot. Ooh.
Yeah, but when you're good at it, it's hard to stop.
It's hard to stop.
So it's a straight on sky hook is what it is without the hook. But so he's a unique player, I guess, is what you're saying, and I would agree. He's a very unique player.
All right. So speaking of unique, let's flip it around on the Pacers. Coach Daigneault the other night was talking. I think this was right after Game 2 about the Pacers. And was making the point they're just different than anybody else that the Thunder play. That there's not one man that you have to focus on and you have to deal with that one guy. You have to deal with the sum of the parts, with the whole. What's your takeaway from the first 2 games about the Pacers? What are you seeing in the Pacers?
Well, I think they're an incredibly unique team. We're 2 games into the finals. There's no Pacer that scored 20 points yet in a game. Yep. I mean, 19 by Siakam in Game 1 is the most.
Yep.
And if most teams, if somebody doesn't get to 20, they're hard pressed to win. And Indiana's sitting here at 1-1, and it's not terribly odd what they're doing. Their leading scorer is not their star. Tyrese Halliburton did not lead them in scoring. Siakam did this season. Yeah. And then the 2 guys that seem to be their heartbeat are, to me, Nembhard and Neesmith. Those are the guys that can take over a game. We saw Neesmith had that great 3-point shooting deal, and Nembhard seems to be the leader of this team. Just me sitting here watching the Pacers play for 96 minutes in these finals, it looks like Nembhard's the guy that makes them go. He's sort of their emotional leader.
True.
He's the guy that's out there generating the excitement, the energy on defense and offense.
He does.
So, and then Miles Turner is a classic modern center, the shot blocker and 3-point shooter. So they've got a lot going for them. And the question is not how'd they get here. Sometimes the question might be, why'd they finish fourth in the East? I mean, you watch them and it didn't seem to be an upset when they beat Cleveland. It didn't seem to be an upset when they beat New York. No. They avoided Boston, but which is fortunate for them, I guess. But they look like a team that's poised to be the best in the East.
Yeah. Yet, as you well know, Thunder were up 15 early fourth quarter, maybe, what was it, up 9 with 2:52 to go in game one, and then obviously up 23 in the third quarter of game two, and up 19 going to the fourth, and they mostly kept their foot on the gas in the fourth quarter this time. So did that show you that the Thunder are just better than the Pacers? Has that been proven yet?
Yeah, I think that's safe to say that the Thunder, we can agree that they're better than the Pacers. We sort of knew that coming in by the totality of their work. And in the matchup, it certainly feels that way. Indiana has led for 1 minute and 51 seconds in this series, which is 0.3 of a second in game one, and then 1:50 scattered in the first quarter of game two. And generally speaking, if this was the College Football Playoff Committee, they'd be all about the game control. But, the Pacers are a team that you got to stay on top of, because we saw it with Milwaukee, we saw it with New York. This is a team that, you gotta beat them, because they're not gonna give up.
No,
they're down 15 with 4 minutes left. They're going to give it the old college try. That's why I actually was a little stunned when Carlisle cleared his bench.
I was too. Yeah, I tweeted about it. Like they gave up now. Yeah.
I thought that was odd. I think it was they were down 15 with 3:50 to go or something.
Yeah.
And that's an almost impossible one to come back from. But they'd done close to that already.
I know.
So I think the Thunder was pleased, saying, "Okay, we'll take it.
Thank you.
That's 3 minutes we don't have to play."
Yeah.
But it's a team you can't give up on, because here they come. And anymore, NBA games are lengthened just by the 3-point shot. If you got, if you can go out there and make 4 threes in a small amount of time, that's 6 2-point baskets, and you don't need 6 possessions. You just need 4, and that's what Indiana does the math. Then it's a math game anymore. So you got to stay on that, and they all can shoot it. Every one of them looks like they can shoot it.
Every one of them. Yeah.
So that's good.
Okay, so gut feeling, what do you think happens tonight?
I tend to think the Thunder will win, just because I've just seen them win all year. When I don't see them lose. Yeah. And when they win unimpressively, you think, what's wrong with the Thunder? Like game 2, you didn't come away. Wow, you came away. They didn't. They made that harder than they needed to, and they've just been so dominant, historically dominant. That it's hard to come back and say, well, I don't know. I think they match up pretty well with the Pacers. They've got answers to the Pacers' problems, so they've been good on the road. So I tend to think they'll win, but they need to get one of these two to get home court back.
Yeah. Okay. So another quick flashback. What would happen, hypothetically, 7-game series between the 2025 Thunder and the 2012 Thunder?
Well, I would assume the current Thunder would beat the 12 Thunder for the same reason other teams beat the 12 Thunder. They just weren't deep enough in 12.
Yeah, I got you.
They didn't go much past 6.
Yeah.
Daquan Cook, for instance, a fine fellow, but he was in the rotation pretty heavy in 2012.
Yeah.
Those kinds of things. This Thunder team doesn't even see the need to start Alex Caruso, who's a phenom. And
Yes.
everybody on the NBA would say, "I'd love to have that guy on my team." He scored
Yeah.
20 points the other night and is just a defensive Doberman.
He is.
Destroys everything involved. So I just think this team is deeper. That team had more star power. Westbrook and Harden, even at 23 and 22, they were a load. But this team is designed to guard anybody.
Absolutely.
And they would have guys they could match up with Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook and James Harden.
I believe they could.
So, and I think they're better coached. I love Scotty Brooks, but one reason they sort of fell apart in the 12 finals is he didn't make the lineup adjustment with, Kendrick Perkins, stayed with Perk too long. So, as a wonderful team, if Serge Ibaka is your fourth best player, you got yourself a heck of a team.
Oh, dude.
But this team goes even deeper. It goes 7, 8 deep. Aaron Wiggins is a guy that sometimes isn't playing much, and he comes out and scores 18 points the other night. So they've got a lot of guys that can help, and I just think they would probably wear down the 12 Durant Westbrook team.
I would agree wholeheartedly with you. Okay, so if Presti's sitting on whatever it is, 13 first-round picks over the next 7 drafts, are we looking at a dynasty?
Well, I mean, it's fun for people like me and you to look at that. They certainly have the potential for a long run. On the other hand, they need to win one.
Yeah.
If you'd have talked June 1st, 2012, if you'd have talked to any Oklahoman and said, you probably ought to win this one because you might not win again, everybody had looked at you like you had 3 heads.
That's
because
correct.
It just seemed like, Durant and Westbrook and Harden. I mean, this is the unbelievable runway. And we're still waiting for our first parade. We haven't we hadn't gone up and down May Avenue, Skip, in front of your old Northwest class in high school for a parade. So, we gotta do something in terms of, you gotta win one before you can win 4. So I would hold off on the dynasty, but they are set up incredibly well.
They are set up.
And here's the thing people forget on why they're set up. They got the superstar, they got a deep roster, and they got all those draft picks. The number one reason people should be confident about the future is those number 2 and 3 players, Jalen Williams from Santa Clara and Chet Holmgren. They're both in their 3rd year, and Chet's really in his 2nd year because he missed the whole first year.
Yep.
They're going to get way better. They're not approaching yet their prime. So, that's where I would fear the Thunder is somebody like Jalen Williams. He's already 3rd team NBA, and he can get a lot better.
He can.
So I think that's the number one reason. SGA, we know what he is, what he's going to be. You don't have to worry about him. The draft picks will be whatever they are. Sam Presti's good at finding, players all the time. But the development of Holmgren and J-Dub from Santa Clara is the reason why this thing could go to the moon.
It could go. All right. So big picture, and there have been a time in my life I would not believe I would ask this question, but have the Thunder become bigger in the state of Oklahoma than Oklahoma football?
I'm going to say yes for this reason, and you know this, Skip. When the Sooner football does well, it's crazy. Everybody goes nuts. It's great economically. Everybody gets in a good mood. But a good third of the state not only doesn't care, they don't like it.
Yeah.
It's a divided state. Most states are on the college level. When the Thunder wins, everybody's on the boat.
Yeah.
Everybody's on the boat. And the thing I say about the difference between the Sooner football and the Thunder phenomenon is when the Thunder's down, the interest ebbs. When the Sooners are down, it doesn't really ebb. That's the passion stays high.
Yeah.
There's more anger than happiness, but it stays high. But when the Thunder's good, everybody's up, and it takes over not just the city but the whole state. All 4 corners. I got I've got 80-year-old aunts in far northeastern Oklahoma that just eat up with the Thunder.
Really?
So I mean, it's a statewide thing, and so I think when the Thunder's good, it moves to number one.
Well, to conclude this, I just hope that kid quarterback from Washington State and his boy wonder offensive genius, the next one in line, can save Brent Venables this year. That's all I got to say.
Well, the Sooners have they got a scheduling break. They don't have to play your Commodores, who are all of a sudden man eaters. They've got Alabama cowering in the corner. So it's a tough road in the SEC, as you know.
Is it?
So I think they're going to have a good football team. I don't know if they'll have a great record. Getting to 9 wins would be an awfully big accomplishment. If they can get to 8, I think that'd be a really good year. I think they're going to have a good team. I just don't know about the schedule.
I got you. Barry, you're a good man. Appreciate your time. Have a good time in Indianapolis, the model city for Oklahoma City. And I'll be reading and watching.
Hey, thanks, Skip. Good to see you.
Okay. Thank you, Berry Tramel. And by the way, if I have convinced you to plunk down a couple of bucks on these finals, big picture, the place to do so is FanDuel. It's America's #1 sports book. It is the franchise, the Cowboys, Yankees, Lakers, all rolled into one. And you can find all the best player props on FanDuel. Get the latest stats right inside the app and see who's consistently hitting the over, who's flirting with triple doubles. And once the game starts, it can really get interesting when you can combine live prop bets into a same game parlay for a chance to win big. Just give FanDuel a shot. I don't know, today. Do it right now. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com / my first name Skip /Skip to join today. You can do it now. FanDuel.com /Skip. Now, quick word about Harry's Body Wash. I use Harry's every time I shower. My favorite is the Stone, which is charcoal and lime, which definitely gives me what I consider a manly scent, not some overwhelming cologne scent, but subtle and strong. Makes me feel better about myself, more confident as I move through the day. I just feel cleaner. I feel more refreshed. So I'm recommending that you complete your shower routine, as I do, with richly lathering body wash from Harry's. That'll keep your game on point. Try it today for just $8 at harrys.com /skip. Yep, use my name, harrys.com /skip. If you want to feel and smell as good as I do after you shower. I just showered a little while ago with Harry's. Smell good. Ernestine and I have often sent Omaha steaks as gifts. So this Father's Day, why don't you give Dad the world's best steak experience with Omaha Steaks? They're worth it. You can visit omahasteaks.com for guaranteed perfect gifts that deliver legendary quality. And for an extra $35 off, use promo code SKIP, SKIP, at checkout. That's omahasteaks.com, and an extra $35 off with promo code SKIP at checkout. Please see site for details. Nobody knows more about Indiana sports than this man. He was a high school basketball star in Indiana. He played for Bobby Knight at Indiana. He coached under Coach Knight at Indiana, was the interim head coach at Indiana after being the head coach at Bowling Green. But this man is far more outspoken than Coach Knight ever thought about being. This man knows. Dan Dakich knows and isn't afraid to tell you what he knows. He's the host of Don't At Me on Outkick. I love that title. And, of course, the Dan Dakich Show emanates from Indianapolis. Coach, appreciate your time today ahead of Game 3 tonight, of course, in Indianapolis. But before I jump in on that, I got to quickly ask you about how you ended Michael Jordan's college career. I'm always fascinated by this story because it's a Sweet 16 game and you get thrown into the lineup to guard Michael Jordan in his final year, his third year at North Carolina. You hold him to 13. You upset them. What was it? 76 to 72, 72 to 68, I guess it was. So what happened? What do you remember most about how you held him to 13 points?
First off, I didn't think you had me on. I didn't remember holding him. Like, hey, Skip, the game is over. We're celebrating, right? And here's the thing: they had Michael Jordan, Sam Perkins, Kenny Smith, but we were Indiana. Skip, we were supposed to beat Carolina.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
But it doesn't matter. We're still celebrating like crazy. And, one of the girls with CBS says, Steve Alford, he had 27. He goes, hey, they want to talk to you, Billy Packer, after the game. And Skip, they grabbed me and said, Dan, they want you too. And Skip, I didn't know why. Like, I had 4 points in the game. And I'll never forget standing there thinking, why the hell am I here? I know Alford, Coach Knight, Billy Packer, Gary Bender, and they asked me, Dan, how'd you do it? How'd you stop Michael Jordan? And Skip, swear to God, that's the first I'd ever heard that I stopped Michael Jordan. I didn't know. Okay. I was just playing. I was just playing. I fouled out. He fouled out. And Skip, swear to God, I took public speaking. My parents are teachers. And Skip, I looked dead in that camera. How'd you do it? I'm thinking, how'd I do what? How'd you stop Michael Jordan? And I looked at the camera, Skip. I said, well, it just wasn't that hard. And Knight looks at me like, you're a dumbass. Get out of here. But, I do remember, though, that summer going to the Olympic trials because they were in Bloomington in 84 and all that stuff. And I remember Coach Knight sitting down. He would sit next to me while I was watching practice, and he'd say, you're going to be known as the guy who stopped the greatest basketball player ever. And I'm like, come on, Coach. Greatest, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. And he said, no, he's going to be the greatest basketball player in the history of basketball. And
really? Wow.
Yeah. And I was fascinated by that. Depending on your opinion, kind of came to be true.
I do think it became true. So as a coach, in a coaching perspective, describe this Pacers team to somebody who hasn't seen them play.
Perfect fit. Kevin Pritchard and Chad Buchanan have figured out team. And I think both have, Skip. I think OKC has as well. Pritchard is a friend, and he has gone every direction. You want to make a trade? Okay, here comes Siakam. Another trade to get rid of Sabonis, and here comes Halliburton. Your second-round pick, Nembhard comes in, Shepard comes in. He just understands fit. And, he also understood, and this goes back to his college days, he understood how good Halliburton was. And Skip, I'm not talking about, just as a player. I'm talking about as a teammate. Halliburton is a lot like Magic Johnson. Magic Johnson's a lot better. Don't get me wrong. I get all that. But he has his hand in on everything, Skip.
Yeah.
They're going to play fast. Tonight, he can't be passive. He's got to, let's say he scores 14 points, fine. He's got to have 18 assists because he's capable and 1 turnover. But the Pacer team is going to play fast. The defense has gotten, I would almost say 50% better. Skip, this is a team that sucked in the beginning of the year. I mean, they were banged up. Halliburton was horrible. Halliburton called himself out. They didn't guard. Now they guard. Siakam is a terrific player. If they're going to play fast, they're going to shoot threes, they're going to swing the ball. And tonight, if you see them getting into too much one-on-one, they're going to get their ass beat because that's not their game.
So Halliburton in the fourth quarter the other night, when it really didn't matter as much, did get loose, and he scored 12. And you see the talent and the firepower, and you say, does he need to do that in the first quarter? And he said after the game, I do need to be a little more aggressive sooner than later. Do you agree with that?
Skip, you've been covering this a long time. Let's be honest. The stars got to be stars, all right? These two teams didn't play each other a lot during the course of the season, twice, I think. And so they don't know each other, but now they do. And your best players got to go. You can't, you get 12 in the fourth quarter of a game that you're not going to win. That's great. Nobody in their right mind would ever question whether Halliburton's clutch. That's been put to bed, right? I mean, that's just, but you got to do it. I was talking to Mark Boyle, the voice of the Pacers yesterday, and we're both saying the same. You cannot come out with that, hey, I'm trying to get everybody involved nonsense. Yeah. You got to be involved, whether it's in transition. Hey, it doesn't have to be scoring. It doesn't have to be a 32 point, 15 assist, no turnover night like he had in a previous round, but he's got to have his hands on every single play in the first quarter and throughout the game. Doesn't mean he got to shoot 100%. Doesn't mean he's got to make 7-3, but nuh-uh. He's that kind. Again, I go back to Magic Johnson. If you think about Magic Johnson, he would have 12 points, but he'd have 10 rebounds, 7 to 17 assists. That's Halliburton. He's not Magic Johnson. Again, don't get me wrong, but that's the kind of impact he has to have. And it was kind of, it's frustrating though, Skip, because if I'm a player of his caliber at this, that should be how you always want to slow guys down as a coach, Skip. You don't want to have to speed them up. When the sped up guys don't make it into the league. If I got to speed you up, you're never going to be great. Halliburton, it's almost like some games needs to be sped up. It can't be tonight. He has got to come out in the first quarter and do a lot, whether it's good or bad, even if it's bad, just be involved, have your hands on it.
Okay. So you've been doing this for a long time and you've seen a lot of basketball in your day. At the NBA level, have you ever seen a team care about playing defense the way the Thunder care about playing defense?
No. And that's where I go to fit, right? I mean, Skip, they got a superstar. And I think you were in Chicago covering the Bulls when Jordan was around.
I was.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I've always said this about NBA players. If you want to be a great, great player, two things have to happen. One, you got to work on what you don't do well. Like Jordan developed a mid-range game. Magic could be a three-point shoot, that kind of stuff.
Yep.
Second thing is, the great players are on the all-defensive team. The great players guard like crazy. The great players, I'm talking about the great, great players. When the game is on the line, I'm putting Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, but he's not there yet, but that team is. And again, I go to fit, Skip. They got dudes in there. Like, I love this Hartenstein. I loved him last year when he was with the Knicks. He doesn't care. What he wants to do is guard, be physical. He wants to get others the ball, and he's a fit Dort, a fit. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander can go score 35, but he's going to get in a stance. Key to the game tonight, Skip, and you're talking about defense, the Oklahoma City Thunder are so much better at guarding their own man than the Pacers are, and that's a problem. When you can contain your own man, then you don't force help. You don't leave three-point shooters. All of a sudden, the backboard, the offensive backboard, Pacers can't get to the offensive backboard because there's no rotation. The Pacers, even in the game they won for 47 minutes and 59.7, they couldn't keep the ball in front of them.
No.
And tonight, how many times in this series, if you've watched this series, see a Pacer guy drive it down the lane, you think he's getting to the rim, he doesn't, then he jumps up in the air, spins back, and tries to throw it out. Well, there's nobody to throw it out to because the defense doesn't have to collapse. When you can guard your own guy in modern basketball, that is the key to playing. Used to be help side defense was the most important thing. No. You got to guard your own guy. OKC is great at that.
Okay, so what the Pacers have been greatest at in the playoff run is coming from hopelessly behind. I've never seen anything like this because now they've come back 4 times from at least 15. It was 3 times from at least 17.
Yeah.
How and why? How do they make this happen?
The short answer is they got guys not afraid of the moment. Like they got a real team. Like this is a team. Even my wife was a softball All-American and coach and all that. And doesn't really care about basketball that much. And she's like, Dan, I love this team. And when you're connected, that helps. That's big. But they got dudes that aren't afraid of the moment. They got dudes that even if they miss, even during the course of the year, Halliburton or Siakam, they're not afraid. They don't care if they miss, and that's part of it. The other part, honest to God, and I don't understand this in the NBA, in every one of those instances, the other team led up to a degree. Yeah. Like Neesmith goes and dunks one against Cleveland to start this big rally. Well, if I went back and watched the Knicks series, Knicks were still up 5 in the biggest comeback there was, and OG Anunoby tries to say something to Karl Anthony Towns, and he's bitching at OG Anunoby. And you're like, well, wait a second. You can't come apart. And the Pacers don't come apart late.
No.
And last thing, their style of play lends itself to scoring spurts. Skip, they knocked in 6 threes in the last 9 minutes
They did.
of game 1.
Yeah.
Now, I'm no math major. Let's just multiply that by 5. So in 45 minutes, that'd be 33. They're capable of that kind of run, but there are a lot of factors. And I would venture to say that ain't happening again, Skip. That's not happening again.
Yeah. By the way, Oklahoma City made 0 threes in the last 9 minutes.
That's right.
So your takeaway from games 1 and 2 is the Thunder are a little better than the Pacers, but the Pacers have some sort of will about them that make them extremely dangerous.
Yeah, I think you said that right, because if I said that the Pacers' advantage was will, that'd be unfair to the Thunder, right? I mean, the Thunder, let's be honest, it's been the best team all year. And will is great, but you mentioned it earlier. There are very few teams in the annals of pro basketball that have played better defense over the course of a season than the Thunder have. There are very few teams that over the course of basketball that in an NBA season have only lost 2 games in a row twice the entire year, once in November and once back in April. So I don't want to say the Pacers have a better will. Pacers are really good, really talented, tough basketball team. They are. And you know what? It's the NBA. You're not sweeping, Pacers winning game 1, people disappointed game 2. Skip, you'll understand this. On my shows, I'm like, what would you think? They were going to sweep?
Yeah.
Like, why are you disappointed? You got a game. But my takeaway, Thunder are the better team right now. Pacers have to figure out a way to score consistently, and it can't be one-on-one. It's got to be the old Roy Williams, Dean Smith secondary break. Keep the ball moving. Don't let the ball stop, reset, get in a set, that kind of thing. And frankly, they can't let they can't let the 2 guys off the bench, Wiggins. They can't let those guys go for 40 or 38 or whatever they win. You can't. That's nonsensical. That happens, you got no shot. But the Thunder are a better team to this point.
So you mentioned Halliburton as your superstar, but any given night, as Coach Dagnall said the other day, it's hard to figure who these he said there's not a player where you go in and say, well, we have to stop him. It's not how the Pacers play. They still don't have anybody who scored 20 in games 1 or 2. Oh. And Siakam on any given night, I mean, he's been here and done this before, so he's capable of being the best player, right?
Yeah, I love him. I watched him when they won the title.
Yeah.
You don't watch a team like you do when you're a media member in in your market. He's damn good. I'm gonna throw some names. My all-time favorite basketball player is number 10 for the Chicago Bulls, Bob Love. And he was a forward. Shot Bobby Dandridge and him and that's who he reminds me of. He got a little fadeaway, shoots the ball up here, uses the backboard. Skip, and he's great. Like, he is a great player to have on your team. Is he a superstar? No, I don't care. And he's got to be big tonight. Again, this Skip, more than any other league, probably, stars have to play in the postseason. You can get a guy come off the bench, hit a home run. Bernie Carbo back in the day, Chris Chambliss, famous home. You can get a guy do that. But in basketball, over a 7-game series, man, your stars, they got to shine, because it's, I'm not relying as the number 3 hitter of the 2 guys in front of me getting a hit, driving. You're going to have the ball in your hands. And Siakam, I would argue this: if Siakam and Halliburton don't combine for at least 40 points, Pacers aren't going to win. They got to get in the 50s between the 2 of them, I think.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Go big picture quickly with me. Indiana basketball, state of Indiana basketball, starting with obviously the movie Hoosiers, is it in America. Did the movie overhype it a little bit? What is it still that way? Is that the feeling you got growing up in Indiana, that basketball was religion in ways it's not religion in the rest of the country?
I grew up in Northwest Indiana, Gary,
Yep.
Indiana, which is basically Chicago, right? We're on Chicago Times, Chicago TV, Chicago, all that. I didn't grow up with a small town
Yeah.
feel, but I will tell you that once I started getting recruited, and Purdue recruited me, Indiana recruited me, other schools. I had a brother that was in college at the time in Southern Indiana, and he's like, "Yo, you're going to Indiana." Well, why? He goes, "Well, because you don't understand how big it is. We live in Northwest Indiana where we follow the Bulls, the Bears, the Blackhawks, the Cubs, Sox." And I quickly learned over my 16 years at Indiana. And to your point, when I was in high school, we played a game, a regional game, second round of the tournament, had 10,000 people in there. WGN brought a truck in there, and in Gary Westside High School. It's not necessarily that way anymore. They went to a 4-class system. People have moved on. I went to a high school game last year to see one of my former players' sons play, and it was against the number one team in the state, and there weren't very many people there. It's a little bit now. It's overblown, Skip.
Yeah,
Back
I
when
got it.
Hoosiers was being written, the guys that wrote it, Angelo and David, they nailed it. Skip,
They did.
They nailed it. And even in Northwest Indiana, like I said, we had 10,000 people at a high school game, probably 4 different times, right? So, yeah, it's pretty big. But I'll say this, Skip. I've said this forever. Once I got to Indy, started a radio show, there is nothing in Indiana, including the state tournament, including the 500, like Pacers playoffs. And it's unbelievable. I don't know how it is in Chicago or LA or New York because they're bigger cities. But like my wife and I, we're going to go downtown today. Game's at 8:30. We're going to get downtown about 5:30. We're going to have dinner outside. The weather's beautiful. The city comes alive. It literally is the best thing. I hear people say, I don't like the NBA. Okay, great. Don't like the NBA. But like the NBA playoffs, man, particularly in our town, because it is nuts.
It is nuts. Okay, there's another basketball team in your town featuring a woman named Caitlin Clark. As a former coach, describe her game that you've seen so far as a professional basketball player.
The most unique, fan-friendly basketball game that a player in the WNBA has ever had. It's, I said from the get-go, it's Steph Curry. We've seen, and this is unfortunate, we had a great player here, Tamika Catchings, but we've seen her game. Asia Wilson's a terrific player, but we've seen her game.
Yeah, we have.
We've seen from the free throw line down, or we've seen from the 3-point line down. We haven't seen anything like Caitlin Clark. And it's not only like people talk about, well, her shooting from the logo. Yeah, I get it. Okay. But she has a Pete Maravich type flair. Like, I'm Serbian, so Pete Maravich is one of our all-time heroes, right?
Absolutely.
So she has a Pete Maravich type flair. And when you go to a game, I don't know if you've ever been to a game, man, we sat right on the court. She yelling at her teammates. She yelling at the coach. She's yelling at the refs. I mean, there's an edge to her that you like too, right? I mean, people like people with an edge. Like, people can say whatever they want about Michael Jordan, but people like the fact that Michael Jordan gambled. It was a bit, had an edge to him. And I just say this, she's the most unique player I've seen in women's basketball. And again, I have a stepdaughter that played college Division I sports. My wife, Division I coach and athlete. So I've been a big follower of women's sports.
Yep.
And I've never seen anything with her game. I'm sure there'll be more, but I haven't seen anybody. That's what I think people miss it. They talk about white girl. They talk about white privilege, blah, blah. That's crap. Her game resonates with people that love basketball because it's unique, right? I mean, that's the deal.
And yet, I may be preaching to your choir here, but I still can't understand why the veteran stars in this league, and I'm talking about black and white stars, will not embrace her drawing power, because it is supreme. She put this league on the national map. I don't care what you say, and yet they try to bully her, they try to intimidate her, they try to rough her up. I don't get it.
Skip, it's the dumbest, I don't know if I can swear, stuff that I've ever seen, man. I mean, I went, you do a local radio show in Indianapolis. We don't have baseball. So what you talk about? Before Caitlin Clark got here, Skip, I went an entire summer, didn't even mention the word fever unless I had a fever. Like, unless I was sick. I swear
That's
to
a good
God.
line. Yeah.
Right? I mean,
Yeah.
I literally didn't. In fact, my producer said, you know, the Fever ending their season? I go, I didn't even know they were playing. Well, I was talking to
Yep.
Michael Thompson. You remember Michael Thompson, number one
Do
pick in the
I?
draft, Clay's
Yeah.
dad?
Yeah.
He comes on my show, and I asked him, because he was on, the Lakers when here comes Bird and Magic. He was in the league. And he said, yeah, we were a little jealous, sure. But we understood that this is going to make us all money. This is going to grow the league. And these dumbasses in the WNBA are so sexist because she's a straight girl, racist because she's a white girl. That is complete bullshit. And I'm sorry, I get fired up, but I'll tell you something else. Fever are screwing it up. It's the third time that somebody, mostly Angel Reese and the Chicago Sky, have falsely accused Fever fans of racism. Every time it's total nonsense. But the Fever, even here, Skip, the Fever administration won't come out and defend the fans and stand up and say, wait a second, cut this crap out. We got great fans. Nobody's been racist. You all have accused. They won't. And people here, even in Indiana, are starting to get pissed off at the Fever management saying, hey, man, how long are you going to let this go before you defend us? And I think they have a point.
They're afraid of offending. Management's afraid of offending the black veteran stars. Yeah,
they're afraid of the woke, all the woke stuff. But I have three friends, all of whom have daughters, and they bought season tickets. Guy goes, hey man, I'm so tired of being called racist. I spend between 25 and 35 grand a year on Fever tickets because I got 4 tickets. We go, we eat, we do blah blah blah. He goes, I'm so god dang tired of being called a racist because my daughter, he was sitting in the section it supposedly came from. He said that was crap. But again, it's not just the idiotic, sexist, racist players. It's the league not defending fans, and it's the Fever themselves. Have a golden goose here, sold out crowds. Defend your damn fans that are paying money.
Well, Dan, all I got to say is Caitlin obviously has been injured for a while. I haven't watched a single Fever game while she's been out. And I love Aaliyah Boston, and I love Kelsey Mitchell. I love watching that team play. I love them all. But if Caitlin's gone, I'm not watching. If she should be back the next game, I'll be watching. I won't miss a game.
I'd be honest with you, I won't either. And
there you go.
But I also haven't. Now, again, you've done sports talk shows. You know that, you got to play the hits, all that kind of stuff. So obviously the Pacers are dominating it, and Anthony Richardson is as well. But having said that, she's still a big draw, and we haven't spoken about the Fever once since she's been out.
I got it. Coach, you're a good man. I appreciate you giving us this time, and we'll be watching, and we'll certainly be watching Game 3 tonight. Appreciate it.
Anytime, Skip. Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you. See you
Thank
guys.
you, Coach Dakich.